Hello. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Excellent. Okay. My name is Courtney Shaw, and I am the facilitator of the Community Conversations series. We are trying some new things today where we're having both the live sessions in person. So thank you all for joining us, our live audience here, but also combining that with a live Zoom event. So we do have some people signing in from all over to watch as well. So thank you and welcome to them as well. And at the end of the session, we will have hopefully some time to do questions from both our live audience and our Zoom audience. So people on the Zoom, if you want to put a question either in the chat or in the Q&A feature, please feel free to drop that in there. I will be monitoring that while our speakers are giving their presentation. Next week, I want to remind you that we have another event. We have 25 going on 5, why adult children still need their parents. And as somebody who with 2 children that are right on the edge of adulthood, I'm definitely going to want to be at that one, even if it weren't my job to be at that one. I'm definitely going to be there for that. So please come back and in either format, live or via Zoom, to join us for that as well. And now I want to introduce some new speakers to our Community Conversation series. I'm very excited when I get to bring new people into the Community Conversations family. So Kristine Langley is the area manager for Lower Columbia College Early Head Start home-based programs. That organization provides direct service to the families of infants and toddlers and prenatal parents in their homes. Kristine has worked with very young children and their parents in this community for 24 years, providing developmental and infant toddler mental health services. She received a master's degree in early childhood education with an infant mental health specialization from Portland State University. Go Vikings.
Yeah, go Vikings.
Yeah, I remembered it. Woo. Okay. And Michelle Strozyk has worked in the field of early childhood education for 23 years, 12 of those here at LCC Head Start EHS, ECEAP, and most of those years have been spent working directly with infants, toddlers, and their parents. She is the area manager for our program center-based Early Head Start program, which is a partnership with the Longview School District. That organization offers a high-quality early learning program for the infants and toddlers of teen parents, home visiting, parent education, as well as life skills high school classes for the student parents. Michelle earned her Bachelor's of Science in Early Childhood Education from Concordia University. I don't know the mascot there. Okay. And endorsement from the Washington State Association of Infant Mental Health. And she holds her Washington State CTE teaching certificate. So please welcome Kristine and Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. We are so glad to have you join us and participate in a conversation that we feel like is one of the critical conversations that needs to be happening in early childhood education. Often it's left out. So also thank you for having me. It's for me to come and just talk about something I feel so passionate about for an hour. It's kind of a gift to me. So I appreciate you being here. We will be talking about attachment, how it impacts your map of the world, and resilience, and just discussing how inner maps can be redrawn. So some of this conversation that we're having can sometimes just trigger emotions, thoughts, feelings, defenses about your own experiences. So we like to really recognize that and have you all just really take moments to sort of think about what you're thinking about. So connect with yourself and what some of this is bringing up for you. We all have the same brains that we're talking about. We all have systems, we're human. So we have a couple of breaks just built right in where we're just going to take a minute to give you some time to stop and process a little bit of a brain recess, like in grade school. We all need a little recess. And those will be we'll have a couple of those in our presentation. So a couple of disclaimers. I want to let you know this is a very complicated topic. And by necessity, to fit it into under an hour, we do need to simplify it a little bit. So we do understand that this is far more complicated, and that this we're going to be talking about a lot of research. And the research we're going to be talking about generalized information, and with any kind of social experimentation. There are people who fall outside of those generalities. So again, just a recognition of that. So thank you for being here. Oh, we'll start just some groundwork, building from the ground up. We're going to talk a little bit about a foundation of attachment. There are 4 stages that have been recognized by John Bowlby. You'll hear his name several times. He is considered sort of the founding father of attachment research, of attachment theory. So there's 4 stages of attachment that have been identified, and they're pretty well accepted across researchers and across areas of study. So the first one is asocial. So this is just the area where infants are, we have our infants. We're of course automatically in love with those babies, aren't we? We see them and we just fall in love with them. And they're in the process of falling in love with us too. But this is a stage where they're getting to see the face of who they've been listening to, who have they been hearing, and recognizing that that's the same face that comes up over and over again. And noticing that when they make movements, when they smile, when they open their eyes wide, that there's a reaction from another person. At 6 weeks to 6 months, it becomes indiscriminate. So they're starting to recognize that this is my person. This is the person that meets my needs. But they still don't have this incredibly strong preference for one person over another. Lots of people can take care of them, but they're learning who are their people, who's their tribe, who do they count on. At 6 to 18 months, it becomes really specific. Those of you who have children will recognize this is the moment when your child realizes that you aren't always in their presence, and they're not happy about that. They're going to demand you be there as much as they can. They have some stranger anxiety. This is also the stage where they are starting to developmentally recognize that you don't, when you are not visually in their sight, that you haven't gone away. You're still available to them. You're still present, even though they may not see you all of the time. So they're learning that. And then at 18 months and up, it's reciprocal. They start to develop a really strong attachment. And I want to bring this up because it's going to become relevant as we go through some of these slides, some of these areas of development. So interestingly, these 4 areas of development, which is a little bit rare in the area of social sciences, it crosses all cultural, social, economic settings. So as the research has expanded across the world, we found that these 4 stages, they hold across all cultural boundaries. So when no serious disruption occurs. So. There we go. So according to John Bowlby, again, there's that name, the father of modern attachment theory, a child's needs and the caregiver response is a nucleus of the early relationships. Sounds easy, right? Child has needs, parents meets their needs. That sounds like an easy thing to accomplish, says every parent thinking of, like every brand new parent. But then he gets a lot more complicated. And he says a parent needs to provide appropriate levels of stimulation to help a child develop comfortable body rhythms, learn how to maintain emotional equilibrium, and cycle relatively smoothly through the day and night. A parent promotes the child's survival by providing comfort, protection, nutrition, and cultural knowledge. So the attachment relationship allows a child to maintain optimal emotional comfort. And that's a really important phrase to stop and think about. It doesn't say to help a child learn defenses to navigate a difficult world. It says optimal emotional comfort. So attachment is a really natural and reliable process. It's a biological process that we are born with. And probably for the survival of our species, we are the most vulnerable newborns of all species. We would have to have levels of attachment in order to survive from the earliest years. But attachment can also be based in anxiety. It can be developed through insecurity, fear, So it's going to be a natural process of development, but where the foundation of that attachment comes from is important for us to be thinking about. So now that we have heard a little bit about the foundations of attachment, I'm going to talk a little bit about attachment styles. We'll begin with secure attachment. So when caregivers respond to children in an attuned way, it brings the child physiology back into balance. Children learn to trust that their needs will be met. They learn to trust their parent or their caregiver. With secure attachment, you may see children upon separation from their parent who show a little bit of distress, but they will seek comfort from another caregiver. And they are easily comforted when their parents return to the environment. Children who, so anxious attachment, when an adult responds to a child's distress in inconsistent ways, the child will become preoccupied with the caregiver's negative emotions, particularly anger, which inhibits exploration, causing a child to potentially whine, demand attention, and that is in an attempt to recapture that attuned moment with their parent or caregiver. So children who have anxious attachment styles show greater levels of distress upon separation, and upon reuniting with their parents, seem to both seek comfort and attempt to punish the parents for leaving. Avoidant attachment is when an adult responds to the child's distress in a way that is cold, distant, or negative. The child learns quickly to avoid feelings and dismiss the parent's mental state. From the outside, this style can look like independence. And on the inside, the child's really just trying to cope the best they can without that trusting relationship. And so you might see a child upon separation from their parent who shows no stress or very minimal stress upon the separation, and kind of ignores the parent when they're reunited at that reuniting point at the end of the day. Disorganized attachment is when the adult is both the source of fear and the protective attachment figure. So this is the most extreme, obvious situations such as abuse, trauma, neglect, and severe parent-child misattunement. These things compromise the attachment system in the child's brain, and we see children who have no predictable pattern of attachment behaviors at that point. Okay. So you can, sorry, I have to step away from that mic, so I'm not screaming at you. So I think that you probably all can recognize that you may know some adults who follow some of those patterns, right? There are people who bring those up through their adulthood. I love that the next conversation you guys are having about how there are 25-year-olds who still need their parents. So I think it's important to see how this goes through how this filters through our lifespan. So we're going to take a quick break, and I just wanted to to throw in some useless bit of information for your brain. I picked a couple of pictures that I thought would have a little bit of a relaxing feel to them, and so I found a little bit of research that showed that the most relaxing images that you can have are green, particularly nature, blue, seascapes, man-made fractal images. You're looking at a man-made fractal image right now. Repetitive patterns, green nature. This should be incredibly relaxing for you. Take a quick nap over there. Curved shapes, and of course, cute animals. So we're just going to take about a minute and just kind of connect and think about your own attachment relationships and just what that might bring up for you. And you might want to process that information now. You might want to hold on to it for later, or maybe nothing's coming up for you. That's okay. So, all right. There's no second hand, so There's no second hand, so. So how many people do we have in? Is there a? Okay. I wish this was more of a conversation than a lecture. I want to hear what people are thinking. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully you're done processing. All right. I want to talk a little bit about attachment versus attunement, or attachment and attunement. So as I mentioned before, attachment, it's a unidirectional phenomenon. So it can be based in anxiety, fear, insecurity. Attunement is something really different. Attunement, according to Dan Siegel, we're attuned with others. We allow our own internal state to shift. We resonate with the world of another. The resonance is at the heart of the important sense of feeling felt. I love that particular statement. It's so simple, but that's how we all want the person that we care most about to be connected with us. We want to have a feeling of being felt. So I know it's not the most descriptive terminology, but somehow it makes sense to all of us. So children need that attunement. So attunement leads to mirror neurons, which develop. Children start recognizing the intentionality of the movements that you're making. They're looking at you. I mean, you're an alien to them. They have never seen anything quite like you, and they don't know why your face moves the way it does. They don't know why your hands are doing what they do, but they're watching you carefully, and they're trying to just inch their way into your internal world, your head, what you're thinking, which is, if you imagine, that process is huge for infants to be thinking about what you're thinking about, or to have any clue that a person is thinking separately than they're thinking. So of course, in the first stages, when mirror neurons are developing, they don't have any idea of that, but that's where they're heading. That's the process we're developing. And so they start recognizing your intentional acts, and they start building up the capacity for imagining themselves doing it. You see those babies who are looking at you, and you're talking to them, and they're starting to imagine that they can talk back to you. In order to do that, they start moving their little mouths, trying to imitate what you're doing, all the while imagining themselves talking. And you get to this stage where you see children who look like they are talking to you exactly. They believe that they're having a conversation with you in exactly the same way you're having a conversation with them, except, it sounds like a foreign language. In their heads, their imaginations, they're doing what you're doing. And that's the process. So building that capacity for attunement, that results in the development of some really complex processes that happen all up here in your frontal lobes. And all of your frontal lobe process development, all of that is your relational development. All those important things you know and need to know about how to navigate the world. Did you hold the door open for somebody when you came through today? Who'd you wake up next to? Were you happy? Were you able to recognize the need of the person in front of you? Could you understand what they were telling you when they talked to you about their day? All of those important relational developmental skills happen in the frontal lobe. And this is where it starts. This is a seed that develops that frontal lobe. So one quote, I wish I could tell you who said this, I cannot remember, but I love the quote, was that we are not the survival of the fittest, we're the survival of the nurtured. The most nurtured children are the ones who are the most successful in the world. I am going to show you a couple of wonderful examples of attunement.
Dear road rivals, I hug the road with all-wheel drive. That's not even an option on the Honda Accord.
Okay. They need to work on that, right? Yes, okay. Did you understand it though? No. Okay. All right. Huh? Oh, no, not this one. This is the grand finale of this. Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're gonna do next season because they did some stuff this time. Exactly what I was thinking. Oh yeah. Right. Don't bring that again. You know what I'm saying? Don't do the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah. Yeah. Like go somewhere else with that, but don't bring it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what I said. And then it was like, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, what in the world? But don't do that here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Really? I thought the same thing. We think a lot alike, huh? Oh, that's crazy. Right.
So I don't know if you were, it's just such a cute video. He, yeah.
What else, bro? Like, look.
He was using his hands the way they were both sitting in the same position, looking forward, using his hands the way he imagines his dad is. And sometimes his dad would nod and he'd nod too along with him. There's some of those mirror neurons happening. So, okay, we'll show you another one. We'll probably stop about 2 minutes into this one. It's a longer one. So
Tell me about it. Really? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Are you feeling better? Oh. Are you feeling better? You feel pretty good? Huh? You feel pretty good? Yeah. Oh. You were pretty mad before. And now you're like so happy. Huh? Were you hungry? Yeah. What else? What else? Did you have a good day? Huh? Did you have a good day? Oh my God. Oh. Tell me more. Tell me more. Oh. What else? What else? Did you swing in the swing? Did you swing in the swing? Really?
Daddy.
Did you get dizzy? Is it kind of dizzy? Yeah, like that?
You-
Oh, are you pushing on me? You want to swing and bouncy? Oh, did you go on the bouncy seat?
I have to
Did you go in the
ask you
bathroom?
something.
Was it going like this? Did you go on the bouncy? Oh my goodness. Was it fun? Did Daddy put you in there?
So I wish you could have seen Mom's face during that one, so you could have seen what her expressions were and how that baby might have been imitating some of those. But you could see how in tune she was with what that baby needed, and even just the bouncing, she was able to recognize that that was something her baby might enjoy, and so baby was just moving his little mouth and watching her face so carefully. You could just see how carefully that baby was watching her. So. Yeah. Good examples. Okay, so some of the influences on attachment that are less positive. We know that disruptions to attunement can happen, and I'm just skimming the surface of the reasons why attunement might be disruptive. Just recognizing that there are many things beyond this. So depression, substance abuse, violence, poverty, mental illness, the disability of children or caretakers, and the mismatch of temperaments. The mismatch of temperaments is one I just want to stop in a minute and focus on, because It's hard to assess for, it's hard to recognize, and for parents, it's a really hard thing to adjust to. So it's possible that your child's temperament is so far off of yours that it's hard to get in tune. And sometimes that comes from a parent who struggles to take the perspective of other people and so can't shift to think somebody else may think like them. Other times we have children with temperaments that are just really challenging. We all know some of those kids that are a little bit harder. So sometimes that's where that comes from. But some really insecure attachments or disrupt or, like serious issues to attunement can really lead to some really negative outcomes throughout the lifespan of a person. So anxiety, depression, self-harm, violence. We have research from decades back that have linked some disruptions in attachment to some of these really serious mental health issues, but also we've attached the disruption in attunement and attachment to a range of illnesses and ailments. So one thing we know about a lack of attunement is that it creates some serious stressors for infants. And if those stressors go on too long, if they're too pervasive, then we know that it sort of disrupts the system that's designed to really support, to really support your system. So your system sort of malfunctions. What happens is that a child who's chronically stressed, they're unable to decrease their stress responses when the stressor starts to dissipate. So the system begins to malfunction. So, and that system that's designed to really protect a child biologically becomes toxic in their life. It increases their cortisol levels. And the increase in cortisol levels, particularly if it's a really long-term increase, has a lot of impact on your physical and mental health, a lot of negative impacts. So that attachment, it's a behavioral system that's supposed to protect the biological unit. And when there's a real disruption in attachment and attunement, it does the opposite. It attacks the biological unit. So how does this affect our inner, oh, sorry, go back. I've got a lovely video that we skipped. So precursor to this video, I just want to say, some of the things that, some of the systems, let's see, let me back that up. So if you want to scroll down, or yeah, there we go. Keep going. There we go. It'll be under English, the being list. Okay. So some of our own experiences can result in some really challenging emotions that come up for us when we raise our own children. And this video, we talk a little bit about, there's some talk about shark music. So shark music is your own reaction to sometimes what your children are doing, some of their own emotions. So we can see them as stressors. Sometimes we aren't able to acknowledge them or even recognize them. So some of the things that we talked about, the disruptions to attunement, so depression, substance abuse, violence, poverty, those are all stressors that bring our stress levels up really high. And our children's behaviors, even their simplest behaviors, even behaviors that don't have negative connections to them, can sometimes really trigger responses in us that are hard for us to recognize or to know where they come from. So I'll let you play that. And
parents. Throughout history, we've struggled to get it right. We hope we won't pass on our emotional issues to our kids, and we swear we won't make the same mistakes our parents did. We all have great intentions, but something seems to get in the way. Let's look at what that might be. At Circle of Security Parenting, we believe that being emotionally available to our children and their needs is the key to doing our best as parents. We call emotional availability being with. It means teaching emotional intelligence by being with our children in all their feelings, like sadness, joy, anger, curiosity, pain, frustration, excitement, and so on. Being with children helps them understand, trust, and move on from feelings. And knowing someone is with them in their feelings helps children feel less overwhelmed and more secure. Decades of research backs this up. For parents, some of this comes easily, but other times our children express emotions that make us uncomfortable, so we pull away or try to overrule their feelings, which leaves them on their own. We do this because our children's feelings can trigger strong emotions in us. We think of it like this: our history during childhood of how core people responded to our different emotions creates the background music for how we experience our children's feelings. Let's look at this example. This girl and her father have been enjoying time together in the park, but suddenly aware of the time, Dad says, "We need to go." When the girl hears this, she starts crying and gets increasingly angry. All at once, the dad's background music changes. The background music that is playing for the father right now, we call shark music. As it turns out, the dad's own mother was uncomfortable with loud displays of emotion, and she didn't know how to handle them. So throughout his childhood, she repeatedly told her son it was pathetic to cry, and she never ever asked him about his feelings of sadness or anger. His ability to deal with his daughter's emotion now is greatly affected by the experience with his mother then. Shark music, we're rarely aware it's playing, but it's our past experiences telling us to be afraid of or uncomfortable with a feeling or need that is actually safe. When our shark music limits our ability to respond to these feelings, our children learn to hide or feel ashamed of them. This is a problem because we're teaching our children to fear emotions that are actually both safe and essential in life. Most of us experience shark music with one emotion or another, and it's different for everyone. But whenever it is triggered, our ability to respond to our children's needs is limited. The good news is, by simply calling it by name and reflecting on what our children need in the moment, we can turn down our shark music. This is so important because if we can learn to manage our history of negative experiences and perceptions, we can respond to the truth of our child's current situation and be with them in it. Ultimately, this will help our children grow up with a better ability to understand and share more of the emotions they experience. There's no escaping it. Strong feelings are a challenge to manage as parents, but our children always benefit when we have an accurate response to what's happening, rather than reacting to the shark music we're bringing into the relationship. Remember, there's no such thing as perfect parenting, and blame never helped anyone feel more secure. That includes blaming ourselves. But the more often we can identify our shark music, the better off our children will be.
Yeah, shark music. So some of these disruptions to attunement, they can really amplify our shark music. We all have it. And I like that in that video, they like call that out, that we have shark music. We all have it. When our kids throw a tantrum in the store, we all have our big emotions about that, about our child having big emotions. So some of these disruptions to attunement, though, they can seriously amplify the shark music, which creates a cycle of less attunement. Another, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead and click them all down. So, and I'm gonna just skim right through this. We just talked about a lot of this. So toxic stress seen in young infants, increased cortisol level. We know that disruption in attachment and attunement can lead to decreased developmental levels. Children who are spending their energy trying to understand the person who is their caretaker, their safety net, tend to shift their energies toward that. They spend a lot of their time, rather than exploring the world around them and increasing their developmental levels, or spending their time trying to figure out this little mystery, and well, not a little mystery, a big mystery. Their parents are the big mystery that they need to solve before they can move into increasing developmental levels. There's more negative mental health outcomes. Some of those negative mental health outcomes I want to point out too, we see as early as 2, including depression and anxiety, physical illness and ailment. So how does this impact our inner map of the world? So what does this mean for us? So attachment is the foundation for the child's perception of their self and the world around them. So of course, those are the things that they're learning from their attachment. They're creating a framework of who are the people in the world around me? What are they going to be like? What can I expect from them? So, oh, sorry, I keep getting close to this other one and doubling my volume. So that's the framework they're developing. This is the foundation. So you can imagine if that we create a toxic foundation, or a foundation with a lot of fissures and cracks in it, or a foundation that just is soft because they can't quite get a handle on it. It keeps shifting under them. Everything built on top of it is going to be influenced by what's at the bottom of it. So our earliest relationships, we actually, that we use for the rest of our life, they're encoded in neural circuitry, 12 to 18 months. So that's not a lot of time. And when we say encoded, it doesn't mean it's permanent or forever, but the most important part of this neural pathway is developed by 12 to 18 months. And it's entirely an implicit memory outside of awareness. And that's a really important piece of what we want to talk about today, is that these relationships, these attachments, these attunements, they're happening outside of implicit memory, outside of your awareness. It becomes the rule for relating, and you can't even remember why it's a rule, because you can't remember those moments when those relationships were developing before the age of 18 months. So it's called the known but not remembering. So that's the given for our relational life. So when these experiences have been less than optimal, then we get stuck. We get stuck in these new relational experiences, and they call it being encased in neural cement. I really like that because it's a very graphic way of saying that there are some things that you will never break free from. You can build on them. You can move past them, but it's still in neural cement, meaning that the neural pathway you developed will never disappear. We can never prune that particular pathway away. Those are the relational experiences that get stuck. And we have patterns that develop into personality disorders or personality challenges. So our inner map is under construction all the time. So no, yeah, it's okay. That's all right. But just our foundation, it's laid before our working memory is in place. So it is very hard to get back to those places and do repair. So attachment and resilience. Resilience is something that we look really carefully at, because children are going to have really hard things happen in their lifetimes. During their lives, they're going to have hardships, things that are physically or mentally just challenging to get through. We know that's the truth. That's the rare person who doesn't have really hard things come up in their life. And resilience is what we try to build at the youngest age in order for them to navigate rough waters. With resilience, they come out of those things healthy and hopefully happy and able to manage all of the big things that are going to come next or that have happened to them. So protective factors that attachment can really, a really healthy attachment can what I'm thinking of, impact are the questions that babies ask from the earliest age. Am I loved? Am I lovable? Do I have a secure base that I can explore, that I can return to when I explore the world? Do I know what to do with my emotions, which is a big one? Do I know what to do when I have big emotions? When we think about some of the biggest challenges with adults in the world today, many of them are not knowing what to do with their biggest emotions. So, and attachment has a really strong foundation in that. So, a couple of areas that we know that by promoting really healthy attachment and attunement that we can have an impact on: self-regulation, the ability to recognize what you're feeling and knowing what to do with it. That comes from a really healthy attachment and attunement with a caretaker. Perspective taking, which we talked a little bit about in regards to the mirror neurons, that's the beginning of perspective taking. And that would be the ability to understand the world of a person who's not you, the people who are driving the car in front of you that might have accidentally cut you off, or your spouse or your siblings, being able to get in their heads and wonder or guess at what they're going to do next. We know some of the most successful people have the highest abilities to take the perspective of the people around them. And that happens at the beginning with attunement and by developing those mirror neurons. Those are people who have these like super frontal lobes. Another one I forgot to put up here, but I wanted to mention is initiative taking. That's another really strong strategy for resilience, the ability to go out and have the ability to take chances, take risks, to do the things that you need to do, reach out. And that requires a secure base. Rarely do you find a child or an adult who can take big risks that don't have some secure base to come back to. And I don't mean risks like jumping off a cliff or like skydiving. I mean taking big emotional risks. You have to have secure bases that you can return to that help you, that and where you're borrowing from those secure bases. You're borrowing their own about their regulation. So okay, we're going to take another quick break and just let everybody sort of stop and take a deep breath and kind of check out what you're thinking about. I think that we probably have, like, maybe we should leave at least 5 minutes for questions. And we might just really have to. This will take about 5 minutes for each. Okay. Let me know when you're ready. Okay. So what's next? Some strategies for caregivers and parents to help with those, some other protective factors, excuse me. These are some, not a complete list, of the things that we can do to help children develop a secure attachment. So responsive caregiving, from birth, children are born and their communication method is to cry. That's how they let us know when they're hungry, when they need a diaper change, when they're tired, when they're uncomfortable, hot or cold. And it's our job as caregivers and parents to recognize that those cries are asking us, help me, I need something. And then it's our job as parents and caregivers as that child develops to begin to understand their cues. What does this cry mean? What does this facial expression mean? And then we meet those needs. When we're responding to children and they're getting their needs met constantly, we're helping to create a secure attachment with that child. Serve and turn interactions, one of my favorite things, and we saw it in that video that Kristine shared with the dad and the baby on the couch and the mom and the baby that she was holding. It's that really rich back and forth with a little one. We do it, it helps them, it creates the foundation for brain development and for all future learning. It's that baby looking at you and making a little O face and you coo back at them. But those examples in those videos, they were excellent. I don't think I really need to explain it much more because you did get to see what it looked like, but it helps to create that relationship. Co-regulation, babies, again, they're born with a fully developed survival brain, and to get their needs met, they cry. And as they develop, they don't understand what their feelings mean yet. So it's our job as parents and caregivers to teach them what angry feels like and what scared feels like and what sad feels like. And so we do that through co-regulating. If I have a toddler here in a classroom that I'm teaching in, and he's, you know, angry because Johnny took his blocks, and it's my responsibility as the parent or caregiver to regulate myself as I'm going to that child and then helping that child regulate their own feelings. So I might take some big deep breaths because, you know, I'm human. I may be triggered by his screams right here on the floor. I might be thinking, like in that video we just saw, oh my gosh, he's screaming again. Now I'm, you know, irritated. So I need to regulate myself to be able to help this child regulate. I'm going to take those really deep breaths. Babies don't have that ability to self-regulate yet. Toddlers don't yet. They need us to be regulated, to breathe with them. We're downloading calm. We're lending them our executive function. We're really helping them learn what those feelings are and how to regulate them. Rupture and repair. This is where, oops, I messed up. I didn't respond to you right when you needed me to, in any way. It could be misreading a cue of an infant who was hungry and we thought they were tired. Being triggered by a toddler behavior and not taking time to regulate myself. And so I react instead of respond. And so it's just really important to those attachment relationships that we're going to those kiddos and we're saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You were hungry and I thought you were tired. Here's your bottle. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You were mad that Johnny took your blocks and I yelled at you to stop. You know, so it's that oops, we're human. We did a human thing. And now we're fixing that connection. We're fixing that attachment. And I have a 16-year-old. I still have to do that with her. And she likes it when I'm wrong. So she enjoys that. Emotion coaching and validation of emotions, kind of what I was saying with co-regulation. It's really important that we help children learn what those feelings mean. You know, sitting with a toddler who just had their blocks stolen and saying, wow, you're really mad. That made you mad that he took your blocks. It's okay to be mad. And then helping them find out what they can do next. That helps them understand that emotions are normal. We're human, we have them. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it's what we do with them that matters. So helping our children learn that they don't need to be ashamed of whatever big emotion that they're experiencing in the moment. And Kristine spoke about this a little earlier, but the awareness of temperament and the goodness of fit. Parents to children to early learning providers, any other family member, we're all born with very specific temperaments. And sometimes there's a mismatch in there. Sometimes
my temperament doesn't match your temperament, and it can create this little bit of, I'm going to call it conflict. But as the adults, as the parents and the caregivers, it's our job to notice, or it's our job to help a parent notice if they're not having that goodness of fit with their own child, and give them strategies to help to build that attachment stronger and bring that back. So,
Yeah. So what's next? What does all that mean? And I'm hoping that today in this conversation, we were able to help you see that attachment, if we don't address it as a community, as a society, that we're starting our kids out with a deficit, that by not recognizing it, many of the really hard things that come later that we are spending all of our money trying to address, mental health services, developmental services, those come in the wake of attachment. So what does that mean for us as a society? What do we do next? And again, I just want to remind you, I'm skimming the surface of what I want to tell you. This is a whole nother community conversation that we might have, but what do we do next? We need to be thinking about, how do we get parents connected with their children when they need to be? What are the workplace benefits and requirements that offer parents flexibility, strategies, ways to stay connected with their children? And again, we look back at those periods of time that I talked about. We had those 4 areas of attachment, those 4 stages of attachment at 6 weeks. 6 weeks, they're moving into a new stage of attachment, right when we typically tell parents they need to go back to work. Government support services. How do we make sure our families can be as healthy as possible when their children are the youngest, when they have infants and toddlers in their home? Making sure that they have enough food, flexible jobs, safe neighborhoods, prevention services, just recognizing, again, let's move into prevention. We're paying a lot of money out. We're paying a huge price for not focusing on prevention. Mental health, medical services, childcare and preschools.
so childcare, preschool, and school districts, just so important to bring in comprehensive training around all of these things for our educators and paraeducators and other school district administrators and staff, and where we can continue to learn as educators, learn about the impacts that this has on the behaviors that we see, because we know all behavior has a meaning. And if we don't have those trainings, then we might just see this child and label them as a thing and not understand that whole story.
Right, right. We'd like to see this become a perspective that more people use, that when they look at when a child has a medical concern or when they have a developmental concern or behavioral issues, that the lens we look through is, where are they at with their attachment and with their caretakers, with their families? So there's a lot of policies that we could make adjustments to that might just help us look through that lens a little more clearly. Like, as I mentioned, increasing benefits to allow parents flexibility. Invite and involve parents. Most of you who've had children in the grade schools in the last, I don't know how many years, but we're not really invited. We're not really part of the educational process unless there's something wrong. We get the grades, we have 10 minutes of conversation with their teachers, but when there's issues, we're not inviting and involving parents. So in all areas, we should not be doing therapies separate. Developmental, mental health, it needs to involve the family. We need to help heal the family before we can move into strategies for mental health or development. Developing community spaces. I don't know if you've looked around Longview Kelso lately at how many spaces are really available for parents of young children. Fenced parks that have small equipment for our littlest ones, they're just really not available. We're not creating safe places for them. Funding more in-home support services versus having your children be out of the home, in-home, where all of the work is really happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I'll let Michelle wrap it
Oh my
up.
gosh, and it's so hard because these last 2 bullet points are like my heart's work, and I could soapbox this for another hour, but we should do these things also. We need to be investing in quality community childcare settings. We need to be building, okay, so first of that's, I guess, one of them. When we invest in quality community childcare settings, we're investing in educators. They're feeling more supported. They're getting paid better. They're having the opportunities to provide greater opportunities, activities, experiences with the children in their care. And they stay longer. We need to invest in this so that our early ed people, our infant toddler educators, they want to be there. They want to stay. And so we can maintain that continuity of care for kids. And
I'm not telling you to wrap it up. I
Okay.
was just giving them time to look at that slide.
And we need to be building early learning and child development programs into our high schools as well, because human development is something that I think all children who are interested, all high school students who are interested, should have the opportunity to learn about. And there are students in our local high schools who are interested in early childhood education. They're interested in infant toddler development. And when we can bring that in as a track for a trade, just like there are other trades being taught in our high schools, we can really help to build our field from high school and then into the community college system. So.
I know I didn't give you as much time as I hoped for questions, but I did want to put it out there if there's any questions or comments.
We do have a shout out from the Zoom crew. We have this is super helpful. Thank you for putting this all together. So the Zoom people are very very gracious. And I had one comment just talking about resources and something that's child appropriate, a place to go. A shout out to our libraries. They really provide, especially in our climate where parks are not always an option. Public libraries are a wonderful place that parents can take their small children and do developmentally appropriate experiences and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Courtney, for mentioning that. I should have included them. They are really the one place that has stepped up for infant and toddler appropriate spaces. Yeah.
Do we have any questions before we get, okay, one question, cutting us off.
Yeah, another great video is like when the baby was able to hear with a hearing aid. That's a great one because before the baby's not able to hear but react to the mannerisms of the face, but when hearing, then you get that additional learning point. But it seems like it's active learning and active listening that really, and it's specific for both parties, the parent and the child. So if they're involved with both of that, then I guess you got a super team right there. So
yeah. Yeah. Active listening is an interesting word too, because it really implies a lot. It is something that we need them to do, but we often find that we need parents to be still. It's really hard for us to be still and hear, and that is active at the same time. It's also passive. So I love the idea of the video that you were talking about where the hearing aids come in, because the framework of that child's world is that mouths open and close. They've developed this framework of what relationships look like. You could see with the baby that they were developing. It was part of developing the social rule that people stop talking when somebody else is talking, that there's turn taking happening, and with babies that don't hear, they don't recognize that. They just see mouths opening and closing and it. Yeah. Yeah. Some deep biological processes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you to Michelle and Kristine for joining us and sharing their knowledge. And thank you all for coming. Take care and join us again next week.